My
Welcome
name
to
is
my
Marcel
channel.
Thompson, 35 years old, and I never imagined my gift
Try
of
to
love
hear
would
the
ignite such chaos.
latest
After years of
story.
success, I finally bought my hardworking parents their dream seaside home for their 50th anniversary. What should have been tears of joy turned into something else entirely when I arrived to find my mother sobbing on the porch, my father shaking with anger, and my sister's family claiming what was never theirs to take. The look in my sister's husband's eyes, as he confronted our father, still haunts me. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and like if family loyalty matters to you, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to stand up to toxic relatives. I grew up in Riverdale, a small Midwestern town where everyone knew everyone. Our neighborhood wasn't fancy, just modest homes with well-kept yards where kids played freely until streetlights flickered on. My parents, Thomas and Grace Thompson, were the definition of hard-working middle-class Americans. Dad worked 40 years at the local manufacturing plant, rising from assembly line worker to floor supervisor through sheer determination. Mom balanced part-time jobs with managing our household, making sure my sister Amanda and I never felt the financial strain they endured. Our home was small, a 3-bedroom ranch with dated wallpaper and carpets well past their prime. But what it lacked in luxury, it made up for in warmth. The kitchen table witnessed homework sessions, family game nights, and countless conversations about our dreams. My parents postponed their own aspirations to fuel ours. Dad drove the same pickup truck for 20 years, postponing repairs on the house to pay for our extracurricular activities. Mom clipped coupons religiously and worked retail during holidays to afford Christmas gifts that made us feel like the luckiest kids in town. The sacrifice that stays with me most was their retirement fund. When I was accepted to Northwestern University to study computer science, my scholarships covered most costs, but not all. Without hesitation, my parents dipped into their modest retirement savings to cover the gap. Education is the best investment, Dad would say, waving away my concerns about their future. They did the same for Amanda when she attended state college a few years later. College opened a world of possibilities. While many classmates came from privilege, I carried the weight of my parents' sacrifice. This drove me to excel, graduating summa cum laude and landing a coveted position at a Chicago tech firm. The starting salary was more than Dad made after decades at the plant, a fact I never mentioned to spare his pride. 4 years later, I took the biggest risk of my life. With 2 college friends, I co-founded Cloud Secure, a cybersecurity startup focused on protecting small businesses from increasingly sophisticated attacks. The timing was perfect, as businesses were rapidly digitalizing without adequate protection. We worked 18-hour days, living on ramen and coffee, pouring everything into our vision. The breakthrough came in our 3rd year, when a major security breach at a regional bank chain made headlines. Our solution identified vulnerabilities their expensive enterprise systems missed. Within months, contracts poured in. By year 5, we had offices in 3 cities and a staff of 75. When a tech giant acquired us 2 years ago, I walked away with enough financial security to never work again if I chose. Meanwhile, Amanda's path diverged dramatically from mine. After college, she married Derek Jenkins, her boyfriend of 6 months. The wedding was hastily arranged, and looking back, the red flags were visible even then. Derek, unemployed at the time, spoke excitedly about the career opportunities my parents' wedding gift would help fund. Those opportunities never materialized into stability. Amanda and Derek bounced between jobs and apartments, frequently asking our parents for temporary assistance that somehow became permanent. They had 2 children, Lily and Zach, who became the center of my parents' world as grandchildren often do. My parents never complained, but I noticed how their own retirement dreams, particularly Dad's wish to travel, and Mom's hope for a home near water kept getting postponed, as they helped Amanda's family stay afloat. Despite my financial success, I lived relatively modestly in a downtown Chicago apartment, investing most of my wealth. The idea to purchase my parents their dream retirement home came during their 49th anniversary dinner. Mom mentioned offhandedly how she still cut out magazine photos of coastal homes, a dream collection she'd maintained for decades. "Someday," she said wistfully, "maybe we'll rent a beach house for a week." That moment crystallized my purpose. They had sacrificed their dreams for us. Now I could make their dream reality. I began searching coastal properties immediately, focusing on areas with milder winters that would be gentle on their aging joints. The perfect property appeared unexpectedly during a business trip to North Carolina's Outer Banks. A local realtor mentioned a foreclosure, a 3-bedroom seaside home in a small community called Pelican Shores. The previous owner, a retired doctor, had passed away, and his children lived overseas with no interest in keeping the property. At $460,000, it was significantly below market value due to needing updates and the bank's desire for a quick sale. I toured it that afternoon and knew immediately the panoramic ocean views, the wraparound porch where Dad could enjoy his morning coffee, the sunroom perfect for Mom's reading nook, and enough guest space for grandchildren to visit. I made an offer that day, arranging for local contractors to modernize the kitchen and bathrooms before the big reveal. The excitement of planning this surprise carried me through months of preparation, imagining their faces when they realized their magazine cutouts had materialized into reality. Amanda and I were inseparable as children, despite being 3 years apart. She was my fiercest defender when neighborhood kids teased me about my thick glasses and math competitions. I helped her with homework and built elaborate forts in the backyard, where she staged theatrical productions starring her stuffed animals. In those early years, our bond seemed unbreakable. The first fissures appeared during high school. While I gravitated toward academics, Amanda sought popularity and attention. She began dating boys our parents disapproved of, and staying out past curfew. Many nights, I awoke to hushed arguments in the living room when she returned home hours late. Mom would cry, Dad would pace. Amanda seemed to enjoy the drama her behavior created. "They care more about their rules than my happiness," she'd complain the next morning. "But you wouldn't understand, golden boy. Everything you do is perfect." This unfair characterization stung. My achievements came through relentless work, not parental favoritism. But Amanda crafted a narrative where her struggles resulted from unfair treatment rather than her choices. This victim mentality grew stronger over time, particularly after she met Derek during her junior year of college. Derek Jenkins entered our lives like a thunderstorm, loud, disruptive, and leaving damage in his wake. 10 years older than Amanda, he dropped out of 3 colleges and cycled through numerous jobs, always with elaborate stories about how the system or jealous bosses conspired against him. He drove a flashy car he couldn't afford and charmed Amanda with grandiose promises. Mom saw through him immediately. "That young man has wandering eyes and empty pockets," she warned Amanda during one of our Sunday dinners. "He's looking for someone to take care of him, not an equal partner." This observation, though accurate, only pushed Amanda further into Derek's orbit. They eloped 6 months later, devastating our parents who had saved for years to give Amanda a proper wedding someday. I attended their courthouse ceremony, watching uneasily as Derek winked at the female clerk during their vows. The next few years established a troubling pattern. Derek would announce a can't-miss opportunity, requiring immediate investment, a franchise, a house-flipping venture, cryptocurrency trading. Amanda would pressure our parents to contribute, promising it would be the last time they'd need help. Invariably, these ventures collapsed, blamed on external factors, never their poor planning. I tried maintaining a relationship with my sister, inviting them to dinner when I visited home and sending thoughtful gifts for my niece and nephew. But conversations grew strained, as Amanda's resentment of my success intensified. She made cutting remarks about how some people have all the luck, or how my lifestyle must be funded by overworking, exploited employees. The reality that I lived below my means and had built my company on fair compensation and flexible work policies didn't fit her narrative. She needed me to be undeserving of success to justify her struggles. Derek encouraged this worldview, often making comments about how the really rich guys got their money through connections and privilege. 3 incidents in recent years demonstrated how toxic our relationship had become. First, when I offered to pay for my niece Lily's braces after Amanda complained they couldn't afford them. Derek refused, saying they didn't want charity but later asked our parents to fund the same treatment. Second, when my company's acquisition made small headlines in business publications, Amanda sent a text accusing me of forgetting where I came from because I hadn't immediately offered to pay off their mounting debts. This came despite me previously helping with their mortgage during a period when both were between jobs. The third incident cut deepest. Last Christmas, I gifted our parents a week-long Caribbean cruise, a modest version of the travel they'd always postponed. Amanda created a scene at dinner, accusing me of showing off and making her look bad in front of her children. She reduced Mom to tears, effectively ruining the holiday and ensuring our parents felt too guilty to enjoy their gift. Despite these painful interactions, part of me hoped the Seaside home might heal our fractured family. Perhaps having a beautiful space where we could all gather would ease tensions. Maybe seeing our parents' joy would remind Amanda of what truly mattered. In retrospect, this was naive, assuming generosity could overcome deeply entrenched patterns of entitlement and jealousy. As I finalized plans for the anniversary surprise, I deliberately kept Amanda informed only of the celebration dinner, not the gift itself. I worried she might somehow sabotage the surprise or make our parents feel guilty for accepting such generosity. I wanted their first reaction to be pure joy, untainted by family dynamics. This decision, while well-intentioned, would have consequences I couldn't foresee. Finding the perfect retirement property became my obsession after that 49th anniversary dinner. I created spreadsheets comparing coastal communities, analyzing everything from healthcare access to weather patterns to cost of living. My parents had always been practical, and I needed this gift to be not just emotionally satisfying but logistically sensible for their long-term needs. North Carolina's Outer Banks emerged as the ideal location. The climate offered 4 distinct seasons without extreme winters, essential for Dad's arthritis. The stretched chain of islands combined natural beauty with small-town charm, reminiscent of the community values my parents cherished. Most importantly, certain areas remained reasonably priced compared to better-known coastal destinations. I connected with Julia Winters, a local realtor specializing in retirement properties. "I need something special," I explained during our initial call. "Oceanfront if possible, but most importantly, a place where my parents can age comfortably without excessive maintenance concerns." Julia sent listings for weeks, but nothing felt exactly right. Some properties were beautiful but isolating, too far from amenities my parents would eventually need. Others felt too resort-like, lacking the authentic community atmosphere where my parents would thrive. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Julia called one evening about a property not yet listed publicly. A bank foreclosure, requiring a quick sale. The lighthouse cottage, she called it, though no actual lighthouse existed. It's been empty for 8 months, since Dr. Howard passed. His children live in Europe and just want to settle the estate. The next morning, I flew to North Carolina. Julia met me at the small regional airport, apologizing for the property's condition as we drove. "It needs updating, but the bones are excellent. The doctor built it to last, with hurricane considerations and accessibility features he added as he aged." Turning onto Pelican Lane, the neighborhood impressed me immediately. Well-maintained homes, with a mix of retirees and small families. Then we rounded the final curve, and I actually gasped. Situated on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic, the 2-story cottage featured weather-beaten cedar shingles, a sprawling wraparound porch, and enormous windows capturing the panoramic ocean view. The interior needed work, dated appliances, worn carpeting in bedrooms, bathrooms straight from the 1990s. But the living areas featured gorgeous hardwood floors under dusty rugs, and the open floor plan created bright, airy spaces. Most compelling was the sunroom facing the ocean, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the endless horizon. Mom would sit here for hours, I murmured, imagining her with a book and cup of tea, finally enjoying the peaceful retirement she deserved. Two features sealed my decision. First, the master bedroom included accessibility modifications, wider doorways, a zero-entry shower installations the late doctor had added as mobility became challenging. Second, a detached guest cottage offered perfect accommodations for visits from family, or ideally, a caregiver someday if needed. I made an offer that afternoon, $460,000, slightly above asking to ensure acceptance. The bank responded within hours. The property was mine. Julia connected me with contractors for immediate renovations, focusing on updates that would make the home move-in ready while preserving its coastal charm. The renovation process spanned 3 months, managed remotely with weekly video updates. The kitchen received new cabinetry, quartz countertops, and modern appliances. Carpets were replaced with laminate flooring that mimicked weathered driftwood, but offered better traction for aging feet. Both bathrooms were completely modernized with safety features disguised within elegant designs. I splurged on furnishings, working with a designer who specialized in coastal aesthetics while prioritizing comfort. The living room featured plush sectionals, positioned for both conversation and ocean viewing. The dining area received a large table that could accommodate the entire family. Mom's sunroom became a sanctuary with the perfect reading chair, side table, and lamp I knew she would love. Throughout this process, I maintained absolute secrecy. I told my parents I was involved in a new project, requiring frequent travel, not technically a lie. When contractors had questions requiring immediate decisions, I scheduled emergency meetings to step away and handle them. The few times my parents mentioned their anniversary, I deflected, suggesting we might simply have a nice dinner at their favorite restaurant. Amanda remained equally uninformed. During our limited interactions, I mentioned planning something special for our parents' milestone anniversary, but kept details vague. I invited her family to join the celebration dinner, emphasizing the importance of presenting a united front for such a significant occasion. She agreed with surprising enthusiasm, perhaps anticipating an opportunity to be included in whatever gesture I had planned. As renovation neared completion, I worked with Julia to handle practical matters, transferring utilities into my parents' names, arranging property insurance, and preparing documents naming them as the sole owners. This last detail was crucial. I wanted the home to be completely theirs, with no strings attached and no potential complications from my ownership. 1 week before the anniversary, I flew to North Carolina for final preparations. The transformation amazed me from neglected property to magazine-worthy coastal retreat. Local landscapers had restored the gardens, planting low-maintenance native species requiring minimal upkeep. A cleaning service ensured every surface gleamed. I stocked the pantry and refrigerator with essentials and their favorite foods. The final touch was deeply personal. Over the years, I'd secretly collected family photos, scanning old albums during visits and requesting digital copies from relatives. These now filled carefully curated frames throughout the house, telling the story of my parents' 50-year journey together. Standing on the back deck, watching waves crash against the shore, I felt profound satisfaction. This place represented everything my parents had sacrificed and deferred while raising us. Now, they could finally live the retirement they deserved in a home that would adapt to their needs as they aged. Everything was perfect, or so I believed. The 50th anniversary dinner took place at Salvatore's, an upscale Italian restaurant in my parents' hometown. I had reserved their private dining room and arranged every detail from the centerpiece of golden roses to the framed photo collage documenting 5 decades of their partnership. When my parents arrived, the staff greeted them with champagne and led them to our table where I waited. "Marcel," Mom exclaimed, embracing me. "You said you were stuck in meetings until tomorrow." I may have stretched the truth a bit, I admitted, returning her hug and shaking Dad's hand. "Did you really think I'd miss your 50th anniversary?" We chatted easily as we awaited Amanda's family, who arrived 20 minutes late with a flurry of excuses about traffic. The children, Lily and Zach, immediately complained about the fancy food, while Derek made a show of examining the wine list before selecting the most expensive bottle. Amanda seemed tense, her eyes flickering between me and our parents, as if assessing the situation. The 5-course meal progressed pleasantly, with Dad sharing stories of their early marriage and Mom occasionally correcting his embellishments. My parents had met in college, she studying education, he engineering before Dad's draft number came up for Vietnam. They married quickly before his deployment, enduring a year of separation sustained only by letters. "Those letters saved me," Dad said, his voice growing husky. "Some days, Grace's words were all that kept me human in that place." After dessert, a gold-flecked cake replicating their original wedding design, I tapped my glass for attention. Amanda straightened in her chair, her expression suddenly alert. 50 years ago, 2 young people took a leap of faith on each other, I began, meeting my parents' eyes. Through war, careers, children, grandchildren, and countless challenges, that faith never wavered. You taught Amanda and me what true partnership looks like, sacrificing individual desires for collective dreams, supporting each other through every hardship, celebrating each small victory together. I reached beneath my chair and retrieved a small gift box wrapped in gold paper. Most couples receive gold jewelry for their 50th anniversary. But you two deserve something more substantial than symbols. Mom's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the box. Dad leaned forward, curiosity evident in his expression. When Mom removed the lid, confusion flickered across her face at the sight of a single key tied with golden ribbon. "It's a key," she said, looking up questioningly. "Not just any key," I replied, pulling out my phone and opening a photo gallery. "It's the key to your new home." I passed the phone to them, displaying professional photographs of the Seaside property, a place where you can wake up to ocean sunrises, enjoy coffee on your wraparound porch, entertain grandchildren in the guest cottage, and finally live the coastal life you've dreamed about for decades. Mom gasped, hand covering her mouth as she swiped through images. Dad's eyes glistened with tears he'd never allow to fall in public. The silence around our table deepened as the magnitude of the gift registered. "This is ours?" Dad finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "Completely yours," I confirmed. "Fully paid for. No strings attached. I've handled everything: insurance, property taxes for the first 5 years, even arrangements with a local service to maintain the grounds." Mom began crying then, quiet tears streaming down her cheeks. "But Thomas, we can't accept something so extravagant." "You can, and you will," I said firmly. "Every opportunity I've had came from your sacrifices. You postponed your dreams to build ours. Now, it's time to live yours." Dad reached across the table, gripping my hand with surprising strength. No words passed between us, but his expression conveyed everything: gratitude, pride, and a depth of emotion rarely displayed by a man of his generation. I became aware of silence from the other side of the table. Amanda stared at the phone, still displaying house photos, her expression unreadable. Derek's face had darkened, his jaw tightening visibly. Only the children seemed genuinely excited. Lily asking if the house had a beach, and Zach wondering about fishing possibilities. "When can we see it?" Mom asked, wiping away tears. "That's the best part," I replied. "It's ready now. I've arranged for a car service to take you there tomorrow morning. I'll follow later after handling some work calls. By tomorrow night, you'll be watching the sunset from your new home." "We should all go," Amanda suddenly interjected, her voice overly bright. "Make it a family celebration. The kids have no school Friday teacher planning day. We could help Mom and Dad get settled, maybe stay the weekend." The suggestion caught me off guard. Amanda had shown little interest in our parents' lives recently, unless needing something. Her sudden enthusiasm seemed incongruous with past behavior. "Of course," Mom said before I could respond. "Having everyone there would make it perfect. Right, Thomas?" Dad nodded. though something in his expression suggested reluctance. "The more the merrier," he said, the phrase sounding mechanical. We finalized plans my parents would depart early with the car service I'd arranged, while Amanda's family would follow in their own vehicle. I explained that urgent business calls would delay my arrival until late afternoon. As we left the restaurant, Amanda pulled me aside in the parking lot. "That was quite a performance," she said, her tone just shy of accusatory. "A whole house? Really? Couldn't resist showing off, could you?" "This isn't about me," I replied evenly. "It's about giving them something they've always wanted, but never allowed themselves to have." She studied me for a moment. "And where exactly is this dream house?" "You never actually said." I hesitated, unsure why her question triggered unease. "Pelican Shores, North Carolina. About a half-mile from the public beach access." "Interesting choice," she murmured. "Well, we're looking forward to seeing it." Something in her tone left me unsettled as I watched her family drive away. But caught in post-celebration logistics with my parents, I pushed the concern aside. This was my parents' moment, and nothing would diminish their joy, or so I believed. The next morning, I helped my parents pack essential items for their initial stay, promising their remaining belongings would be handled by the moving service I'd arranged. Their excitement was palpable as they boarded the luxury car, clutching the property information packet I'd prepared with contact numbers for local services and neighbors. "We'll see you this afternoon," Mom called as they departed. "Drive safely when you come." I waved until their car disappeared, feeling profound satisfaction. My work emergency was actually fabricated final arrangements with the property manager and gift baskets from local businesses welcoming them to the community. These could have waited, but I wanted to give my parents time alone, to experience their first moments in their new home without an audience. This decision to delay my arrival by several hours would prove consequential in ways I couldn't have anticipated. My drive to North Carolina took longer than expected, due to unexpected construction delays. By the time I turned onto Pelican Lane, late afternoon shadows stretched across manicured lawns, and a sense of anticipation built within me. I couldn't wait to see my parents settled in their new home, imagining Dad already claiming his favorite spot on the porch and Mom arranging her books in the sunroom. The first indication something was wrong appeared as I approached the property. An unfamiliar SUV with out-of-state plates sat in the driveway, positioned haphazardly, as if parked in haste. Behind it was my parents' car service sedan, but no sign of Amanda's vehicle. Odd, considering her family planned to arrive shortly after my parents. As I pulled alongside the vehicles, movement on the front porch caught my attention. Mom sat on the porch swing, her posture unnaturally rigid. Even from a distance, I could see her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be sobs. Dad stood at the porch railing, one hand gripping the weathered wood so tightly his knuckles had blanched white. The tension in his body was visible, a man physically restraining himself from action. I parked quickly and was halfway up the walkway when the front door burst open. Derek emerged, his face flushed with what appeared to be a combination of anger and triumph. He carried a beer one from the local craft selection I'd stocked specifically for Dad, and pointed an accusatory finger toward my father. "You need to understand how this works now, old man," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the coastal air. "Your retirement plans changed the moment Marcel decided to play big shot." Amanda appeared behind him, arms crossed defensively. Rather than showing concern for our clearly distressed parents, she was smiling slightly, a disturbing satisfaction evident in her expression. Behind them, I glimpsed suitcases in the foyer, not overnight bags, but large luggage, suggesting an extended stay. Dad straightened, his military background evident in his squared shoulders despite his 72 years. "This home is a gift to your mother and me," he said, his voice steady despite the visible tremor in his hands. "You're welcome to visit, but your current behavior is unacceptable." Derek laughed, a harsh sound devoid of actual humor. He took a step toward my father, using his considerable height advantage intimidatingly. "Visit? That's rich. Let me explain how this family works now. Your golden boy, Bought a family vacation home, emphasis on family. That includes us. Mom's quiet voice broke through. Derek, please. This is meant to be our retirement home. Marcel intended. I don't give a damn what Marcel intended. Derek interrupted, spinning toward her. He throws around money without consideration for how it affects everyone else. How are we supposed to explain to our kids that their grandparents live in a beachfront mansion while we struggle with rent? My blood ran cold as I processed what was happening. Somehow, in the few hours since their arrival, Amanda and Derek had reframed my gift as family property, to which they had equal claim. The luggage in the foyer suddenly made terrible sense. They weren't planning a weekend visit, but an indefinite stay. Derek turned back to my father, taking another step forward, until they stood uncomfortably close. He pointed toward the door with his free hand, beer sloshing slightly with the aggressive gesture. "This is my house now," he said, his voice dropping to a threatening level. "Get out. Take your old man dreams somewhere else. We have actual children to consider." Dad didn't move, decades of dignity evident in his refusal to be cowed. Mom's sobs intensified, the sound cutting through me like physical pain. Behind Derek, Amanda actually laughed, a short, satisfied sound that revealed more about her character than any previous interaction ever had. I'm not certain what might have happened next if I hadn't intervened. Perhaps Dad would have maintained his dignified stance indefinitely. Perhaps Derek would have escalated from verbal to physical intimidation. The terrible tableau might have continued until someone broke irreparably. Instead, I closed the remaining distance to the porch in quick strides, making my presence known with deliberate footsteps on the wooden stairs. 4 heads turned simultaneously in my direction. The emotional shift was immediate and profound. Derek's aggressive posture faltered, his arm dropping to his side. Amanda's smug expression dissolved into something between shock and calculation. Dad's rigid stance loosened slightly, relief evident in his eyes. Mom looked up through tear-streaked features, managing a tremulous smile that broke my heart all over again. For several seconds, absolute silence enveloped the porch. Even the omnipresent ocean waves seemed to momentarily pause their rhythm. In that suspended moment, I took in every detail: the packed suitcases visible through the doorway, the scattered toys already strewn across the pristine living room, the property documents I'd carefully prepared, now crumpled on the porch table. "Marcel," Amanda finally said, her voice artificially bright. "We didn't expect you so early." The silence shattered like glass, giving way to a new tension crackling through the air. I stepped fully onto the porch, positioning myself between Derek and my father. Up close, I could see the toll the confrontation had taken on Dad, his face ashen, a slight tremor in his usually steady hands. "Actually, I'm several hours late," I replied evenly, keeping my voice calm despite the fury building inside me. Just in time, apparently. "Would someone like to explain what's happening here?" Derek recovered his bravado quickly, puffing out his chest. "Just a family discussion about expectations and arrangements. Nothing for you to worry about. A discussion that reduced my mother to tears and involved you threatening my father." I gestured toward Mom, who was attempting to compose herself. Wiping her face with a tissue from her pocket, Amanda stepped forward, assuming the role of mediator she'd clearly abandoned moments earlier. "Nobody was threatening anyone, Marcel. You always dramatize everything. We were simply discussing the practical aspects of this situation you've created." "What situation would that be?" I asked, genuinely curious about their rationalization. "This house," she exclaimed, gesturing expansively. "This enormous beachfront property sitting empty while we're cramped in a 2-bedroom apartment. Did you even consider how this looks to Lily and Zach? Their grandparents suddenly living in luxury while their parents can barely afford school supplies?" The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been comical in any other circumstance. I maintained eye contact with Amanda, not allowing her to deflect. "This is Mom and Dad's retirement home," I stated firmly. "A gift acknowledging 50 years of marriage and decades of sacrifice. It's not a vacation property or family timeshare. Derek snorted derisively. Right. You dropped nearly $500,000 on a beach house. But it's just for 2 elderly people, who'll use what? 2 rooms. Meanwhile, your own sister's family struggles. Real thoughtful, big shot. I turned to my parents, softening my expression. Mom, Dad, would you mind giving me a few minutes alone with Amanda and Derek? Perhaps check out the guest cottage we discussed? Dad nodded, helping Mom to her feet. He straightened his shoulders, casting one last look at Derek. Not angry, but profoundly disappointed. They walked down the porch steps and followed the shell-lined path toward the small guest cottage visible at the property's edge. Once they were out of earshot, I turned back to my sister and brother-in-law, dropping all pretense of diplomacy. Let me be absolutely clear, I said, my voice low but intense. This home belongs legally and exclusively to Thomas and Grace Thompson. Not to me, not to you, not to anyone else. I reached into my messenger bag, retrieving the property folder with warranty deed and ownership documentation. I laid these on the porch table, tapping the top page where my parents' names appeared as sole owners. The property is titled solely in their names. The utilities, insurance, property tax accounts. Everything is established in their names only. This was intentional. The home is their legal property to use, enjoy, or dispose of however they wish. Amanda glanced at the paperwork, her expression faltering briefly before hardening again. That's just paperwork. This is a family matter, and as family, we have certain expectations about sharing resources. Sharing resources, I repeated slowly. Like when you and Derek asked our parents for the down payment on your first house? Or the business loan for Derek's failed restaurant venture? Or the tuition for Lily's private kindergarten when the public school was beneath your standards? Derek stepped forward aggressively. Watch yourself. You don't know anything about our financial situation. Actually, I know exactly how much our parents have contributed to your financial situation over the years, I countered. Approximately $78,000 in direct gifts and loans that were never repaid. I know because I've helped them reorganize their retirement accounts after each withdrawal left them vulnerable. Amanda's face flushed, anger replacing calculation. So you've been tracking our debt like some kind of accountant? Keeping score while you sit on your millions? I've been watching our parents postpone their dreams repeatedly to rescue you from preventable crises, I corrected. And now, when they finally have the retirement home they deserve, you show up claiming entitlement to it. I pulled out my phone, holding it visibly. I'm going to say this once. You have 30 minutes to pack your belongings and leave this property. If you're not gone by then, I'll call the local police to document this situation. I've already spoken with Sheriff Williams. Lovely man. Very responsive to reports of harassment or trespassing. This was partially a bluff. I'd met the local sheriff during property closing but hadn't discussed any potential family disputes. The uncertainty in Derek's eyes suggested the tactic worked. You wouldn't dare call the cops on your own sister, Amanda said, though her voice lacked conviction. To protect our parents from further emotional abuse? Without hesitation, I held her gaze steadily. 30 minutes. Derek threw his beer bottle into the bushes with unnecessary force, glass shattering against hidden rocks. This is bullshit. Your parents won't back this play. They'd never choose you over their grandchildren. This isn't about choosing sides, I replied. It's about respecting boundaries and property rights. And from what I witnessed upon arrival, you've demonstrated exactly why those boundaries are necessary. For several tense moments, nobody moved. Then, Amanda's shoulders slumped slightly, a tell from childhood that she recognized defeat but wouldn't acknowledge it verbally. Fine. We'll go to a hotel tonight, she conceded grudgingly. But this conversation isn't over. Mom and Dad would never want to exclude their grandchildren from this place. You're right, I agreed. They would welcome Lily and Zach any time with appropriate notice and respect for their home. What they don't deserve is emotional manipulation and hostile takeover attempts. Derek stormed inside, presumably to gather their belongings. Amanda lingered, her expression shifting from anger to a calculated vulnerability, another familiar tactic. "You've always had everything so easy," she said quietly. The perfect student, the successful entrepreneur, the generous son. "Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow?" In that moment, I felt genuine sadness for my sister, not because her accusation held merit, but because she truly believed it did. She had constructed a narrative where external factors, including me, were responsible for her difficulties rather than confronting her own choices and her husband's manipulative behavior. "Amanda," I said gently, "my success doesn't cause your struggles, and your struggles don't entitle you to our parents' property. I hope someday you'll understand that." She shook her head, tears forming but not falling. "You've turned them against us. They love you and your children unconditionally," I assured her. "That won't change. But love doesn't mean allowing themselves to be bullied or exploited." 27 minutes later, their SUV pulled away from the property, tires spitting gravel in a final display of defiance. I watched until they disappeared around the bend, before walking to the guest cottage where my parents waited anxiously. Mom sat at the small kitchenette table, her hands wrapped around an untouched mug of tea. Dad stood by the window, his military vigilance evident in his posture. "They've gone," I announced simply. The relief in the room was palpable. Mom's shoulders sagged as if a physical weight had been lifted. Dad turned from the window, the tension lines around his mouth softening slightly. "I'm sorry," Mom said, her voice still fragile. "We should have called you immediately, but everything happened so quickly. They arrived just after we did, said they wanted to help us settle in, but within an hour, Derek was talking about which bedroom would be theirs whenever they visited. When your father clarified this wasn't a vacation home, things escalated." Dad cleared his throat. "He suggested we were selfish for accepting such an extravagant gift when Amanda's family struggles financially. Implied we owed them access since we've helped everyone else in the family except them." The irony of this statement was so profound I didn't immediately respond. My parents had sacrificed consistently for Amanda's family, while receiving nothing from them in return. "You don't owe them unlimited access or resources," I said finally. "This home is yours. You decide who visits, when, and under what conditions." "But the grandchildren," Mom began, predictable concern clouding her expression. "Can visit whenever you invite them," I finished firmly. "Amanda and Derek, using the children as emotional leverage, is manipulative and unfair." Dad nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "We've enabled certain behaviors over the years, haven't we?" This simple acknowledgement represented a significant shift in my father's perspective. For years, he justified Amanda's demands as temporary struggles that required family support. Recognizing the pattern as enabling rather than helping marked an important breakthrough. "Perhaps," I agreed carefully, "but you acted from love and generosity. Now it's time to establish healthy boundaries for everyone's benefit, including Amanda's." We spent the next hour discussing practical matters, changing the door locks as a precaution, establishing clear visitation expectations, and ensuring my parents felt secure in their new home. By evening, as golden sunset light streamed through the windows, some measure of peace had been restored. Standing on the main house's back deck later that evening, watching waves crash against the shore, Dad joined me with 2 glasses of whiskey. "You know," he said after we'd sipped in companionable silence, "I spent 30 years in manufacturing learning that sometimes you have to let a machine break down completely before you can fix it properly." I glanced at him, understanding the metaphor. "You think that's where we are with Amanda's situation?" He nodded slowly. "Band-aid solutions have only prolonged the inevitable. Maybe this confrontation was necessary, painful but necessary." His wisdom, As always, cut to the heart of the matter. Sometimes, systems mechanical or familial require disruption before meaningful repair can begin. The weeks following what we came to call the incident brought significant changes to our family dynamic. My parents settled into their coastal home with growing confidence, gradually transforming the house into a personalized reflection of their 5 decades together. Dad joined a local veterans group that met weekly for coffee at the pier, while Mom discovered a book club at the community library. Their natural warmth and genuine interest in others quickly integrated them into their new community. Meanwhile, Amanda maintained a chilly distance, communicating primarily through brief texts about the grandchildren. My attempts to reach out were met with passive-aggressive responses, or outright silence. Derek remained completely incommunicado, apparently holding me solely responsible for their failed appropriation attempt. The children became unintended casualties of adult conflict, a situation I found deeply troubling. Lily, at 10, was old enough to sense the tension without understanding its cause. Zach, only 7, simply missed his grandparents without comprehending why visits had suddenly become complicated arrangements rather than spontaneous occurrences. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I helped my parents implement several security measures, not because we truly feared Amanda or Derek would return uninvited, but to provide peace of mind. We installed a simple security system with cameras covering entrances and exits. The property manager agreed to drive by regularly when my parents traveled. Most importantly, we changed all locks and provided keys only to trusted neighbors in case of emergency. It feels strange, Mom confessed as we programmed the new door code. Taking precautions against our own daughter. You're not protecting yourself against Amanda, I clarified gently. You're establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. Everyone needs secure, physical, and emotional space. This perspective helped ease their guilt somewhat, though the situation remained painful. Dad, typically stoic about emotional matters, revealed his depth of feeling one evening as we sat on the porch watching distant lightning illuminate the horizon over the Atlantic. I keep replaying that moment, he said quietly. Derek standing over me, demanding I leave my own home, telling me my retirement dreams didn't matter compared to his entitlement. He took a measured breath before continuing. I fought in Vietnam, Marcel. Faced enemy fire without backing down. But standing there, watching your mother cry while being threatened in our own home, I felt helpless in a way combat never made me feel. This rare vulnerability from my father affected me profoundly. His generation of men rarely articulated emotional wounds, preferring stoic silence to perceived weakness. That he trusted me with this confession represented a significant evolution in our relationship. You weren't helpless, I assured him. You were choosing restraint, a much more difficult form of strength than retaliation. 1 month after the incident, an unexpected development occurred. My parents received a letter from Amanda. Not an apology exactly, but a carefully worded request to visit with the children the following weekend. The letter specified that Derek would remain home due to work commitments, though we suspected alternative reasons. My parents called me immediately, seeking advice, but clearly hoping for reconciliation. Despite my reservations, I encouraged them to accept the visit, but establish clear parameters a day. Visit only, no overnight stay, with expectations clearly communicated in advance. The visit proceeded without incident. According to Mom's detailed report afterward, Amanda remained subdued, but civil, while the children delighted in exploring the beach and collecting shells. When departing, Amanda surprised everyone by hugging both parents and whispering, "I'm trying to mom a cryptic but potentially hopeful statement." This pattern continued over subsequent months, carefully orchestrated day visits without Derek, gradually increasing in warmth and decreasing in tension. Amanda never explicitly acknowledged or apologized for her behavior during the incident, but her actions suggested some level of recognition that boundaries had permanently shifted. Behind the scenes, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Amanda had begun therapy, a development I found encouraging, despite her continued emotional distance from me. Change rarely occurs in dramatic moments. More often, It emerges gradually through consistent small adjustments. My own journey processing these events proved unexpectedly challenging. As the initial crisis resolved, I found myself struggling with delayed anger and resentment toward Amanda and Derek. Their willingness to exploit our parents' loving nature and manipulate them through guilt struck me as particularly cruel, given how much our parents had already sacrificed. During a weekend visit 3 months after the incident, I confessed these feelings to Dad during an early morning fishing expedition off the community pier. "I can't seem to let go of how they treated you," I admitted, watching my line disappear into the gray-blue water. "Every time I think about Derek confronting you on your own porch, I feel this rage building all over again." Dad remained silent for several moments, his weathered hands working the fishing line with practiced ease. When he finally spoke, his wisdom caught me by surprise. "Anger that lingers becomes a burden you carry, not a message you deliver," he said. "Your sister and her husband will face natural consequences for their choices without you maintaining that anger. Meanwhile, your mother and I are happier than we've been in decades." He gestured toward the horizon, where the rising sun painted the clouds in spectacular oranges and pinks. "I wake up to this every morning now. Your mother reads for hours in that sunroom you designed for her. We're living the retirement we never dared dream about. Focus on that victory instead of past injuries." His perspective shifted something fundamental within me. I had been so focused on the injustice that I'd overlooked the ultimate triumph, my parents' joy in their new life. The gift had achieved its purpose, despite Amanda and Derek's attempted interference. 6 months after moving into their coastal home, my parents hosted their first significant gathering, a small dinner party, including neighbors and new friends. Standing in the kitchen, helping Mom prepare appetizers, I watched through the window as Dad proudly guided guests around the property, pointing out recent gardening projects and sharing plans for a small vegetable patch near the guest cottage. "He seems years younger," I observed, slicing cheese for a platter. Mom smiled, the contentment in her expression warming something deep inside me. "He is younger in spirit. We both are. Having this place, this beautiful home where we can age together without burdening anyone, it's freedom we never expected to experience." She paused, wiping her hands on a dish towel before continuing. "And you know what else? I think this situation with Amanda might eventually prove beneficial for everyone." I raised an eyebrow questioningly. "For the first time, she's facing genuine consequences for her choices," Mom explained. "No bailout, no easy forgiveness without change. That's ultimately more respectful than continuing the patterns that kept her dependent." This insight revealed my mother's wisdom had always run deeper than her gentle demeanor suggested. She understood that truly loving someone sometimes meant allowing them to experience the natural outcomes of their actions, rather than constantly buffering them from reality. As summer transitioned to fall, bringing spectacular color changes to the coastal vegetation, my parents' new life settled into comfortable rhythms. They hosted the grandchildren for a week-long visit, while Amanda attended a professional development conference, an arrangement that would have seemed impossible months earlier. During my Thanksgiving visit, I noticed a profound change in my parents. Beyond the expected adjustment to their new surroundings, they carried themselves with renewed confidence. Mom voiced opinions she might previously have suppressed for harmony's sake. Dad delegated household tasks, rather than automatically assuming responsibility for everything. They had reclaimed not just physical space, but personal authority. On my final evening before returning to Chicago, we sat on the deck, wrapped in blankets against the November chill, watching stars emerge above the darkening ocean. The conversation meandered comfortably until Mom broached the subject we'd all been carefully avoiding. "Amanda called yesterday," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "She and Derek are seeing a marriage counselor. Apparently, things have been difficult between them for some time." Dad nodded slowly. "She mentioned financial counseling too. Said they're working on a budget for the first time." The news surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have, without my parents' resources to fall back on. Amanda and Derek. were finally confronting their underlying issues, rather than temporarily patching over symptoms. That's good, I offered cautiously. Healthy steps. She also asked about you, Mom continued, watching my reaction. Wondered if you might be open to a conversation sometime after the holidays. I considered this carefully before responding. I'd be willing to talk. Not ready to fully trust again, but willing to listen. This measured response satisfied my parents, who understood reconciliation, if possible, would require time and demonstrated change rather than mere words. Later that night, preparing for bed in the guest room, I noticed a framed photo I hadn't seen before my parents on this very beach decades earlier, probably during their honeymoon. Young and impossibly hopeful, they stood with arms around each other, the same ocean visible behind them, that now provided the soundtrack to their retirement. The continuity struck me profoundly, how life often circles back to offer delayed dreams if we remain open to receiving them. My parents had waited 50 years to return to this coastline as permanent residents rather than visitors. Their patience had ultimately been rewarded, not with the exact vision of their youth, but with something perhaps more valuable, a hard-earned appreciation for blessings that come later in life. This perspective helped me release the last remnants of anger toward Amanda and Derek. Their actions reflected their own insecurities and limitations, not any failing of our parents' love or my intentions. True family isn't defined by obligation or genetic connection alone, but by mutual respect, boundaries, and genuine care for one another's well-being. The following spring, my parents celebrated their 51st anniversary with a small gathering at their Seaside home. Amanda attended with the children but without Derek, who was working through some things according to her careful explanation. The tension of previous encounters had dissipated, replaced by a cautious but genuine warmth. Standing on the deck watching the sunset paint the ocean gold, I felt profound gratitude for the journey we'd traversed. The gift intended to honor my parents' marriage had ultimately triggered necessary growth for our entire family system. Sometimes, the most valuable presents aren't the physical objects, but the transformations they catalyze in our relationships and understanding. The lessons crystallized for me that evening continue to guide my approach to family relationships. True generosity comes without strings or expectations. Boundaries protect relationships rather than damage them. And sometimes, the most loving action isn't rescuing someone but allowing them to find their own path, even when that journey includes difficult terrain. As my story draws to a close, I'm curious about your experiences with family boundaries. Have you ever had to stand firm to protect someone you love from manipulation or entitlement? What helped you navigate those challenging waters? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family dynamics and personal growth. Remember, family isn't just defined by blood, but by mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey.